"That's not your seat," she said, barely looking up from the sheaf of documents. The entire room had gone still. His daughter's small hand tightened on the snow globe in her lap, glass reflecting the ring of silent board members. He pulled the chair back without hesitation. "My name S on the pat," he said, voice even. "This isn't about seats." The CEO bristled, fingers tapping the table twice before she set her jaw. "Get security," she ordered. Someone at the wall hesitated. "You never should have come here," she hissed, eyes not quite meeting his. He placed his stack of papers atop the ledger. The logo gleamed in the overhead lights. One board member's pen tapped the glass once, twice, then stopped. His own breath slowed. "It's done," he said calmly. "She still needs a friend." Stay for the truth. It started 4 weeks earlier, just after dawn on Jefferson Avenue. On the south edge of Houston, before the humidity woke up all the way and trucks began their endless ballet through crumbling lots, Mark Turner shouldered his lunch cooler, jaw clamped tight against the ache in his cracked left molar. The tooth, half-shattered months back by the tang of a gas station apple, drove a fresh spike through his jaw every time he forgot and bit down the wrong way. Not that he'd mentioned it to anyone. Repairs could wait, unlike Nora's school tuition, already staring him down from the calendar scribbled on old receipts taped near the fridge. Mark eased the battered tow truck into the Pharma HQ parking circle, fluorescent cones blinking like lazy eyes around the reserved spaces. He was in uniform, gray shirt, company patch barely holding on, the right sleeve riding high around forearms built for cranking stubborn lugs. Management at Caro Biolytics had summoned his company with little warning. A black sedan dead overnight, possibly a security breach. He'd barely finished logging the code when a flurry of heels clicked across the asphalt. She strode ahead of the others, a white suit with its own climate of cool and the kind of deliberate impatience that made assistants flutter 2 steps back instead of ahead. The CEO, he'd seen her on the news, Anna Draycott, 40, all severe bun and clipped diction. "That's the one," she demanded, not bothering to hide the wrinkled curl of her upper lip. Her eyes didn't land on him but on his lunch. "Is that yours?" "Yes, ma'am," Mark replied, setting his bag on the curb while slinging toe chains across one shoulder. Without pausing or explaining, she snatched up his zippered lunch pouch, thumbed open the clasp, and with a flick so economical it might have bored her, dumped the sandwich and apple directly into the nearest trash bin. "No food in the service lane," she said. "We run research here, not a break room." Nearby staff froze mid-step. A young woman's eyebrows nearly vanished behind tortoiseshell glasses. An older man cleared his throat as if to step in, but Anna waved him silent. Mark's hands barely twitched. He reached calmly for the tow spanner, setting it down with surgical care. "Won't happen again," he said, then quietly, "Anything you need moved, I can handle." Anna's eyes swept the side of his shirt, name patch sewn on by hand, thread trailing. "Don't let this one linger," she remarked to her assistant. "I want a full sweep. Security can observe." The toe of her heel nudged his snow globe clear of her path. "Pick up after yourself," she murmured. He bent down, thumb running over the glass dome. Inside, tiny plastic nurses moved around a model hospital, white flecks drifting down. It was all over in a minute, but the sting and the stare of a silent staff lingered. That was how things started. Schedules to beat, pride to swallow, one more ugly Monday. A window above flickered with movement, a girl's ponytail pressed to the glass. Mark kept working. The air tasted of rain, oil, and something metallic. In 30 minutes, the truck engine turned over, and security camera lights blinked off. Upstairs, the boardroom curtain snapped shut. He didn't look back. Back home, the odd quiet of off hours pooled along the walls like the echo of a distant tide. The apartment, 3rd floor, over a noodle shop, smelled like cleaning solvent and the faint ghost of cinnamon, especially on the nights he skipped dinner. Nora Turner sat cross-legged on the rug, turning her snow globe over with both hands as static from her spelling app hissed in the background. He dropped his keys in the heavy ceramic bowl. The bowl, a swirl of navy, a birthday present from his late wife 4 years ago when Nora believed marbled colors made luck. The usual survey, rent slip calendar overdue by 9 days, Nora's school requirement folder half open, the band of her hospital visitor wristband tucked inside. Nora didn't look up. She shook the snow globe again. "How'd today go?" he tried, careful not to clench. His tooth pulsed as the T in today caught his molar. "Okay," Nora said, face hidden by the globe, her reflection hovered in plastic icicles. "Did they like you?" He wondered about lying, abandoned the idea. "They needed things moved," he answered, peeling his gloves off. "Did you let them be mean?" He stilled, palm on the tiny notepad next to the fridge. The snow globe was Nora's new comfort, her own trademark, she called it, after the hospital gift shop replaced her old one last winter. "Sometimes people just act the way they act," he managed. He scribbled a two-line note for Nora's lunch, his left thumb crimping the edges of the sticky paper so it would stick in the sandwich bag. The handwriting, blocky, careful, still tried to copy her mother's slanted ease. Nora slipped the note out, studied it. "What if you didn't have to act tough?" she said, voice sudden, her thumb pressed hard on the globe. He set the pen down, took a long breath. The smoke alarm light blinked in the kitchen, nearly in time. "That's how it is for now," he said quietly. She watched, eyes narrowing a little. "People at school are weird," she told him, "but you always write the notes." He nodded, more in her direction than the questions. The apartment light flickered above the sink, his toolbox sitting quietly on the shelf, the battered remains of a faded Marine Corps sticker half torn on one side. He closed the toolbox without touching it. There was pasta in the pot, water not quite boiling. He cracked his tooth on the pen cap and breathed through it. Nora finished her homework, snow globe beside her, casting shadows over notebook margins. Before she went asleep, she popped her head out of her room. "Dad, do you think it's easier when you're not the boss?" He smiled, for real this time, "Maybe for some people." He tucked her in, the weight of the globe pressed into her arms. He turned the globe once, then set it on her nightstand. The city was quieter here, but inside his head, gears ground on. Anna Draycott surveyed the city's spill of lights from the 73rd floor, her penthouse ringed with glass so clean it nearly erased the world beyond. She stood in stocking feet, frame rigid, the suit jacket hanging from a dark chair carved straight and hard like her father's taste for Danish modern. "Updates," she demanded, eyes on her laptop's edge as her assistant appeared in the doorway, papers stacked to his chin. "We curtailed the Allen shipment," replied the assistant, voice straining to match her pace. "Your 715 is stalling." Anna flipped the paper once, signing with a single slash. "Tell compliance to accelerate, ignore rescheduling." She scanned her phone, no messages from the board but a string of reminders. Anna muted them with a thumb sweep, pausing only when her son's digital calendar pinged, reminding her of his specialist's appointment next week. A recurring conflict, always at 6, always flagged as non-negotiable. She blinked, jaw set. On the credenza, a bottle of anti-seizure medication gleamed, label turned sideways. The phone buzzed again. Anna accepted the call without checking ID. "This is Draycott," she intoned, voice clipped. Her father's old lawyer, voice dry and sterile, spoke. "They're pushing the deadline again, Anna. The board wants assurances, product launch, positive guidance. You'll have to deliver or someone else will." Anna's eye twitched, she sipped leftover tea cold. "The patent authority's complaints." "Buried for now," said the lawyer. "But shareholders are on edge. I recommend you control the narrative, especially around the new merger." She cut the call, eyes tracking the headlines at the bottom of her monitor. Caro Biolytics poised for approval pending data review. A notification flashed, priority, vehicle stuck in loading zone. She reflected barely on the blue-collar churn outside. Tomorrow it would change. She intended to be the one left standing. Downstairs, she authorized the tow. Upstairs, emails began to route to her private folder. Later, her son sent a voice message. "I miss you before meetings." She replayed it twice, glancing out at a city indifferent to second chances. The room was large, but every shadow belonged to her. Within 24 hours, Caro Biolytics, like much of Anna Draycott's life, would not let anything linger, least of all disorder. In the pressurized hush of the research level, a half-dozen engineers fanned around a lacquered walnut conference table. Every head turned at the rustle of static as the central presentation screen flickered, then crashed, blue lines scrolling warnings faster than anyone could process. "Somebody's jamming the system feed," muttered the chief IT lead, hands shaking above the keyboard. "You've got, 2 minutes," snapped a manager. A muffled cough, the doors swung open. Mark, in coveralls, tool belt slung low, stepped inside, towing a cart marked "Service Facilities Only." He didn't need to speak. The alert strobe had beckoned anyone with a pass. The IT team's hands hovered, neither welcoming nor dismissing, as if contact alone might change the flavor of the panic. Mark read the terminal display, eyes skating over log strings dense as code in a cipher. "Firewall's intact," the IT lead announced, sweat dotting his brow. "Can't trace the origin." Mark leaned closer, reaching past trembling hands. One deft flick, switch toggled, subroot directory isolated. "It's not the access credential," Mark said, crisp. "It's the fallback channel left open by the update." The room went utterly still. Someone half rose, eyes wide. Another pushed his glasses up, looking from Mark to the scrolling data. A technician, younger, barely out of college, gawked. Mark keyed the override, watching as the blue scrambled lines regressed, restoring connection before the timer ran out. The main systems flickered alive. A cheer, choked to a whisper, rippled around the table. Anna swept in just then, heels slicing the hush. She took one look, posture hard as battleship steel. "Power back." The IT lead nodded. He found the bypass. Anna's lips compressed. "Lucky guess, anyone could see that." Her glacial gaze landed briefly on Mark. "Send the updated logs to compliance. You can finish your sweep now." She was gone before Mark could respond. But the young technician lingered, face pinched in calculation. "Who did you say you were with?" the technician asked, voice throttled low. Mark, stripping his gloves, replied, "Just service." He let the syllables settle, then added, "Check the permissions file, won't bite you twice." He left the room to murmurs. The technician stared after him. The feeling didn't leave, not immediately. In his pockets, Mark carried a thumb drive he had never used. He had seen this before, 20 years ago. Gregory Tan, junior systems analyst, pulled a late shift on the 4th floor. Questions nipped at his attention, refusing to scurry away. Who was that tow driver? How had he bypassed the system glitch specialists had spent all morning circling? Half an hour after the incident, Tan was on his second coffee, artifacting his way through the company personnel directory. No service employee matched a Turner mark. Digging deeper, he uncovered a purchase order declined by someone signing only M. Turner, engineering consult, 5 years back, untouched since. He slid into the adjacent break room as his colleague Leela, an HR temp, sipped diet soda by the window. "Hey," Tan began, playing casual. "You got a list of facility contractors?" Leela shrugged, scrolling. "Names come and go, why?" Tan hesitated, just wondering why someone so handy turns up blue collar. She raised an eyebrow. "We lose good people all the time, maybe some folks disappear for a reason." He waited until Leela left, then checked the patent filings database. There, in a set of published papers, retracted and reissued, the name Mark T. appeared as contributor to a critical algorithm the company now quietly touted as its competitive edge. Tan copied the citation, heart tickling his ribs. Meanwhile, miles away, Nora returned from school, shoulders hunched, lunch untouched but not returned. She prodded her snow globe, watching a fleck drift over the model surgery suite. "But she needs a friend," Nora said aloud, almost to herself. Mark, in the kitchen, the plate half filled with uncut carrots, paused mid-rinse. He turned off the tap. "Who does?" he asked softly. "The boss lady. You said she acts tough all the time, but she looked tired." He dried his hands. "Some people have to try harder than others." Nora pressed her nose to the cold snow globe glass. "You always look away when you say that." Tan, back at HQ, felt time ratchet tighter. Tomorrow, the merger vote, the outcome to decide not just product fates but jobs up and down the chain. He flagged the artifact, Mark's declined consultancy letter. The date lined up with the company's sudden switch to in-house systems. It was almost as if. Tan's thoughts fractured as the head of compliance stalked in, rigid as a razor blade. "Problem, Mr. Tan?" she inquired, tone already heavy. "Just research," Tan replied, voice high. "What's your source?" she demanded, peering over. He clumsily closed his windows. Outside, shadows pooled around the lot as a new tow truck idled, lights strobing. Anna had apparently called in a rival service, pressure on pressure. The compliance officer leaned close. "Stay out of whatever's not your lane." He nodded, wary. She left without a backward glance. Tan copied the publication, slipped it in his jacket. Across town, Mark received a text. "System error, can you come again?" He called back, voice quiet. "I'll come now, but my standard rate, not theirs." The manager stammered, "We can offer more." Mark replied, "I'll sort it, not about the rate." He gathered his tools, eyes on the clock. He didn't refuse the task, just the price. Night pressed its cartilage-thick silence outside. At home, Nora hugged the globe to her chest as she drifted off. Nothing lingered longer than the question she'd voiced. She needs a friend. At 10 to 10 the next morning, Anna Draycott stood at the edge of the Caro Biolytics lobby, phone clutched so tight her knuckles ran white beneath thin cream silk. An email blared, "Your vote, your future, merger decision AT9am." She issued orders in bursts, each a nail hammered flush. Blacklist the contractor, call the tow company, block his home access, schedule the media preview, no exceptions. Her assistant, shifting from foot to foot, recited, "Legal says he's not credentialed to be on lathe floor." She shut that down with a glance. "Cut any secondary access. Ensure security stands ready. We do not let loose ends undo our quarter." Meanwhile, upstairs, a cluster of employees gathered by the glass walls. Someone whispered, "He's back," as Mark entered, neutral, covering his demeanor with the careful restraint of a worker too alert to be obvious. Tan, by now a full convert, intercepted him. "They've blocked your permit," he whispered. "HR flagged your file, you good." Mark folded his hands. "Not my first rodeo," he murmured, voice low and even. Tan pressed a slip of paper into Mark's palm, his own printout of the patent paper. "That you?" Mark met his eyes but did not answer. He placed the slip silent in his shirt pocket. Downstairs, another tow driver, hired by Anna, idled by Mark's truck. Mark, calm, greeted him. "You moving this?" "Orders high priority," the driver barked. "Need a signature," Mark replied, stacking his gloves. "I don't have all day," the driver snapped. "You're in my spot," Mark didn't shift tone. The driver eyed him, stared at the building. "You real staff." "Enough," Mark said. The standoff broke when security's head barked clear out into the wind. Mark didn't flinch. Tan glanced at both, sweat glistening at his temples. "Something's bigger here," Tan said. "It's the wrong battle." Mark called home before re-entering the building. "Nora, stay by your phone, read the note in your lunch." His voice was granite, still as night water. Only his fingers trembled as he hung up. That night at dismissal, Nora was kept waiting as the school admin sorted an enrollment error. She clutched the snow globe the way she always did on rough days. "You can sit here," the admin said. The chair wobbled. Nora waited for her father. When he arrived, he kneeled to eye level. "You cold?" he asked. She nodded, teeth silent. On the ride home, she did not ask about bosses or seating. He should not have made this her problem. The boardroom had been scrubbed for ceremony, florals, mirrored screens, the press arrayed behind slim stands. Anna surveyed the arrangement. The senior board, head of security, 2 journalists, various C-suite allies. The clock read 8:47. She glided to center table. "We begin when all are present," she instructed, gaze never dropping below eye level. Her assistant shuffled notes. A low murmur rose. Mark's entrance wasn't but a ripple at first, masked by half a dozen staffers gathering papers. Then gradually silences stacked. He was no longer in his work shirt, but nor was he in anything flashy. Crisp shirt, sleeves rolled, a gunmetal watch, old core issue at the wrist. He guided Nora with measured steps, her snow globe clutched to her chest. She picked a seat near the edge, swinging feet just above the floor. Tan, standing by the AV console, slid a thumb drive into the main display. "Shall we begin, Miss Draycott?" he asked, eyes steady. Anna steadied herself at the head of the table. "This is an internal vote on the merger. Uncredentialed observers may wait by the windows." Mark did not move. "My name S on the patent," he said evenly, placing a stack of papers on the glass. Nora mirrored the action, setting her globe beside his elbow. Several board members exchanged glances. One older thumbed a page, mouthing letters. Next to him, an assistant looked down, pen frozen in mid-hover. Tan projected a PDF to the secondary screen, Mark's name M. Turner listed beside the key system algorithm, published, revised, and quietly erased from recent PR. A ripple moved through the crowd. Anna's hand trembled. "Those records are outdated," she said. "This is not protocol. Remove this." The eldest board member rose, his voice, the brittle timbre of old men who have survived too much, cut in. "Mr. Turner, ladies and gentlemen, is the actual originator of the data authentication sequence we are about to monetize." Anna paled Josette. "We settled those disputes," she retorted, voice smaller than intended. Nora's snow globe began to play its winding sound, faint as a lullaby. A junior lawyer whispered, "Without the code, the merger stalls." Anna's hand gripped the chair rail so hard her nail marks scored the lacquer. He waited, silence nestled, thick and heavy. She leaned forward, whispering, "That's not your seat." Her voice, barely audible, carried nonetheless. Mark pulled the chair back, letting the friction sing. "This isn't about seats," he said. "It's about whose name is on the patent." A wave of hush flattened the air. "Get security," Anna spat, twisting for authority only to find half the room looking away. He placed his stack atop the ledger, the logo unmistakable. "She still needs a friend," he said, soft but unbending. The pen in the board member's fingers tapped once, twice, then stilled. Anna tried to speak. Words splintered on her tongue as all eyes lingered, not on her, but on the small girl in the corner, globe flashing its mute storm. He'd done what he came to do, everything else waited. 6 months later, the Caro Biolytics building had swapped banners. A new CEO's name adorned the north elevator while the old board shuffled portfolios in silence. Anna Draycott's departure warranted only 2 lines in the Tribune, no comment given. Gregory Tan accepted a transfer, Director, Research Integrity. He found the shadows less ominous in the new paradigm. Compliance officers greeted him with nods, not glances. At the Turner apartment, sunlight dappled the kitchen table, 5 new sticky notes arranged in a star. Nora tucked her snow globe into her backpack, brushing specks of dust from its glass. This morning, her lunch box held not just an old joke but a riddle to solve, her father's new tradition. As they stepped out, Nora asked, "Dad, do you think sometimes people stop trying so hard?" Mark considered, mouth curving in a smile less guarded than before. "I think, if they have the right help, maybe." She beamed, sliding her hand into his. On the street outside, garbage trucks rumbled by, but the day didn't seem so loud. Nora's globe stayed upright, unshaken. Some truths move quietly through a city, leaving no marker but the questions we stop having to ask. And healing, when it comes, rarely makes a sound. On Wednesdays, after the new beginning and before routine could settle into the bones, Mark and Nora took the long way home. The city felt different, its rush less pointed, its shadows no longer pressing, just a fact of dusk. It was habit by now. They circled the old park where her mother used to take them, his steps unconsciously slowing as they crossed the cracked mosaic path under the sycamore trees. Nora leaned forward, balance precarious on the edge of the bench, snow globe tucked safe in her arms. "You never say what you're thinking," she accused him, grinning so he knew she wasn't mad. He shrugged, looking for words that wouldn't make her worry. "Thinking's not always for talking," he said. Mark met her gaze, softer than she'd ever known it, the undertow of all those hard days blunted by time and insistence. "If I started, I probably wouldn't stop." She bit her lip, considering. Could you try for one thing? Nora hugged the globe so tight he noticed her knuckles mottled white. He reached for her free hand. Okay, I sometimes wonder if I did the right thing, making trouble for people when I could have just let it all lie. But you didn't let people be mean, she said, with a firmness that startled him. And now the workers at your old company don't have to be so scared. He watched leaves eddy around her sneakers. Guess that matters, he admitted. She reached down and spun the snow globe. Maybe Anna Draycott needed to lose. Her voice was almost reverent, a child's certainty that justice, once served, would be simple, clean. A jolt of memory skipped across his mind. Anna at the window that first morning, posture unyielding, hands steady but eyes distant behind her armor. He wondered if, even now, she had anyone beside her in the silent luxury of her penthouse, if she noticed the quiet the way he used to, like loss echoing in the corners. Sometimes losing just means starting again somewhere else, he said quietly. Nora looped her arm through his. I wouldn't lose if I had a friend. He squeezed her hand, and together they watched the last of the daylight scatter through the glass dome of the snow globe. Spring stretched itself with a lazy patience. Back at Caro, small changes began. Tan started a mentorship program for junior staff and sometimes found dog-eared copies of Integrity in the workplace wedged in suggestion boxes. The old guard shuffled off in clusters, replaced by people who shook hands with maintenance and waved to security. One Thursday, months into the new regime, Mark walked into Caro's lobby not as a tow driver but as a consultant. His name was on the manifest, his badge crisp and new. The security guard who met his eyes hesitated, a flicker of recognition passed, then was replaced with a slow, respectful nod. Morning, Mr. Turner. He nodded back, morning, Raoul. Inside, the place smelled less relentlessly sterile. There were posters up for a bake sale, kids, sketches tacked by the staff break room. A bowl of old Halloween candy sat near reception. Tan greeted him by the elevators, clipboard in hand. You'll have the conference room by the window, Tan said, smiling, a proper, full smile this time. Want to see the new safety review board? Lead the way, Mark said. The doors slid open with a cerulean chime. As they stepped inside, Tan lowered his voice. You know, Draycott's legal team must have called me a dozen times. They wanted me to say you were never here. Mark kept his eyes forward, but there was a little curve to the corner of his mouth. What did you tell them? Tan grinned, that the truth has a way of hanging around. Inside the conference room, Mark saw something that caught him off guard. A framed print of the original patent page, names unedited, his in sharp ink alongside the others. Beneath the glass, someone, IT, judging by the handwriting, had scrawled, for everyone who actually fixes things. He swallowed, emotion thick in his chest. Didn't expect that. Tan shrugged, eyes shining. Seemed right. A lot of small things are different now. Want to hear the best part? The board approved a hardship grant fund. Covers dependents' tuition, medical out of pocket. Staff vote monthly. You inspired that. Mark glanced toward the window, watching sunlight flicker over the parking lot. Maybe it'll all stick, he said. Things stick when you teach how, Tan replied. It wasn't just me, Mark said. He saw a flash of Nora's snow globe on her desk at home, little flecks of swirling hope moving between plastic nurses and sleeping figures. Anna Draycott, meanwhile, found herself in a furnished rental in the Galleria district. Her world shrunk to the muted clicks of smart devices and the fishbone silence of someone too used to doors opening for her, and now facing the fact that only echoes answered. Most of her days blurred into executive search calls and private therapy appointments for her son. She missed her office not for the view but the certainty. Every minute accounted for, each task sharply defined. One morning, her son, Joel, interrupted her vacuum-sealed anxiety. Are you okay, Mom? He asked as she quietly folded the mail, glanced over a cavity black espresso. Seeing him, just 13, shoulders bunched, worry at the lines of his brow, disarmed her. Getting there, Anna said after a pause. Will you go back, be a leader again? She traced the rim of her mug. The old answers did not fit. Maybe it's time I learned another kind of work, something less lonely. He nodded, fixing her with a look that saw more than he should. You could help other people now, right? She considered. For the first time in decades, she let the space after a question fill with actual possibility. I could. That might actually count for something. He smiled and she smiled back. It felt shaky but true. On the first day of Nora's summer break, she and Mark took the light rail all the way downtown and walked the last mile to the Southside Children's Hospital fundraiser. The building buzzed with people, nurses corralling would-be escape artists in wheelchairs, clusters of families perched on folding chairs, and tables heavy with cookies and awkwardly painted birdhouses. A volunteer at the entrance handed Nora a name tag, inventor written in big, looping letters. Mark crouched beside her at a science fair-style display showing off their model hospital. Nora set her snow globe beside the diorama, flicking the button so it glowed iridescent blue. "Want to tell them how it works?" Mark nudged, motioning to a couple hovering shyly. Nora straightened. "Inside are all the helpers, doctors and nurses, and the part my dad made for his old company. It checks to see who needs the most help first, and it never forgets who made it work." The couple listened, amused, nodding as she spun her explanation out in cheerful lines. Someone drifted closer, a gray-haired board member from Caro, who winked and pressed a $10 bill in the donation jar. Mark watched his girl taking her place at the center without fear, her voice clear as glass, her hands steady. When there was a break, he sat on the lawn, knees drawn up. Nora sidled beside, snow globe between them. "Think Mom would be proud?" she asked out of nowhere. His voice caught, then he spoke. "Of both of us," he said, certain. She leaned her head on his arm. "Maybe next we can build something together for you." He turned to her, amazed at the gift of it. "We already did." In late July, Anna found herself outside a cluster of glass offices at a nonprofit legal aid center, resume in hand, nerves thrumming. The waiting room was full of parents with children, legal affairs shuffling files, staff in cheap suits. Her suit was no longer designer. Her hair had grown a little wild around the edges. At reception, an older man peered over spectacles. "Anna Draycott?" His smile didn't quite reach his eyes, but his handshake was steady. "Yes, she began, and for a moment the words caught. "We've reviewed your background," he said, gesturing toward a consulting office. "We could use someone to help coordinate outreach grants. The pay's not like corporate, but the challenges are real." She followed, letting the inevitability of direction slip its collar for something more uncertain and honest. Her first project involved helping families whose children needed specialized care, navigation, paperwork, connecting them to hardship grant funds. Late one evening, she returned a call. On the end was someone with a voice familiar but grounded. "Miss Draycott, I'm Mark Turner, consultant for Caro Biolytics. Our new grant program wants to partner with your group. Thought we could talk strategy." Silence pooled between them, not sharp but new. "Mr. Turner," she answered, a hint of surprise warming her tone. "I read about the fund, you're running it." "I'm part of it," Mark replied. "We're trying to do things a better way now. Thought maybe we could learn from someone who knows how a system goes wrong." She almost laughed, sharply at first, then a little more genuinely. "You never let things go, do you?" "I try not to. People need help, and sometimes people need friends too." Something loosened behind her ribs. "Let's meet," she said. "This time maybe you can sit wherever you like." On the call's fuzzy end, Nora's voice piped up. "Tell her we have cookies." Anna smiled despite herself. "I'd like that." Rain flirted with Houston, sending fat drops to dot the steamy asphalt. The city's noise rose and fell, distant, as Mark, Anna, and Tan met at a bakery near Midtown, neutral ground, powdered with flour and laughter. Nora held court with the baker, learning to swirl frosting. They talked shop, then life, projects, then regrets. Anna confessed she sometimes missed the clear lines of leadership, just not the cost. Tan recounted small victories, a worker reinstated, a new mother's hospital bill covered. Afterward, Anna lingered on the sidewalk as Mark packed up Nora's extra croissants. "You know," Anna said quietly, I used to think sitting at the head of the table meant something about worth. Mark looked at her, truly seeing the woman not as opponent but as survivor. Turns out it's more about who has your back. She nodded, eyes shimmering. You didn't have to let me stay in the conversation. He half smiled. You didn't shut the door on learning either. Rain began in earnest, but neither seemed eager to move. Anna reached for her umbrella. If you need anything real, not just paperwork, she started. He cut in gentle, same goes for you. Nora barreled out, croissant fragment in hand. Dad, can Draycott come to movie night? Anna blinked, if it's a group vote. Mark grinned, unanimous, I think. Thunder rolled, and for a brief, thunderous moment, the city's wounds did not seem so deep. That winter, a remarkable thing happened. Caro Biolytics posted their highest morale scores, and Tan fielded so many peer nominations for quiet integrity he had to invent new categories. Nora placed first in the citywide Junior Innovators Contest, her snow globe tech adapted into a toy for local cancer wards. One snowy December evening, Mark came home to Nora orchestrating a grand assembly of friends, old classmates, new hospital buddies, even a flummoxed Tan in a Santa hat. Anna slipped in late, arms full of sugar cookies, her son waving gamely with a bottle of non-alcoholic cider. After pizza and laughter, everyone migrated to the living room for the first annual bedside ball, Nora's name for their snow globe disco. A lull arrived, the rare quiet in a crowded room. Mark found Anna looking at the trees' glittering lights, her face open. He sat beside her. Not bad for a friendless start, she murmured. He smiled, real and unashamed now. Not bad for two people who used to keep score. She considered, then raised her cider in an awkward toast, to losing the right battles and finding a better seat at the table. He matched her, clinking gently, to friends. The room filled with light and gentle music, the kind that forgives. For the first time in years, Mark did not brace against the future. He watched Nora laugh, Anna's son singing off key, and saw a world grown just a bit kinder than the one he fought to fix. The night deepened, the snow globe at the very center of it all, swirling its silent, silver weather. A reminder that some storms break only to leave room for better days, and that healing, when it comes, sounds like laughter shared in the softest dark. And somewhere between one season and the next, the questions faded for good, and the truths they carried grew strong enough to last. The end.